Hi everybody, welcome to Do You Believe on Paranormal Zone TV. Hey, thanks everybody for joining us tonight on this holiday weekend. Would you all please subscribe to my show if you haven't already done so? And for those joining us for the first time, I know we have a couple people. Thanks so much for finding my show. But you know what? Tonight, I'm really excited to have Deborah Moffitt. She's got quite a story to tell us all tonight, and I can't wait for you all to hear it. I've heard several of her interviews, and oh my God, her story. So our topic tonight is a deadly haunting, and our guest, like I said, is Deborah Moffitt. And Deborah will be sharing with us the family's frightening experience and daily chilling interactions with a demonic entity. Deborah, thanks so much for joining us on the show tonight.
Well, thank you very much for having me on.
Now, Deborah, I'm sorry for all your horrible experiences that you had, but I want you to tell all tonight. I want everybody to hear your horrifying story. So would you start telling the viewers, please?
Certainly. Excuse me. I actually started back in 1984. Now, I wasn't even in California at the time, but it started first with my husband's family. My husband's family lived in three houses right next door to each other. There was, in the middle house was my mother-in-law's house. On the right side of that was her mother's house, and on the left side was a house that used to belong to her sister, but my husband had inherited it. Her mother, my mother-in-law's mother, was dying. She had a stroke, and she needed constant care. So they hired a housekeeper, and they hired a housekeeper from Guatemala. Her name was Juanita. Now, I have to kind of go to the future a little bit. When researchers were trying to find out what they think happened that started all this, they referred back to Juanita as the source. They thought, because of the paraphernalia my mother-in-law found in the house, practiced Santeria.
Now, Santeria is like Santeria, for those viewers who may not know, is like a voodoo.
Right, it's like a combination of Catholicism and voodoo.
Mm-hmm. Now, how did you find this Juanita to take care of your mother-in-law?
Now, that wasn't my mother-in-law. It was my mother-in-law's mother. I wasn't even in California at this time.
Oh.
So it was my husband's grandmother that needed the care.
Oh, okay.
Right. So, like I said, she was doing these rituals to keep my mother-in-law's mother alive, because she didn't want her to die. Because she died, she lost her job, and she'd have to go back to Guatemala. Excuse me, and she didn't want to do that. So I don't think she was doing anything out of malice. I think she was doing it just to protect her job and to try to keep the grandmother alive. But the grandmother died. The day that she died, Juanita went back to the grandmother's house to stay the night. In the middle of the night, she came running out of the house, running down to my husband's mother's house, screaming that something was evil in the house. Don't ever go in the house again. She wouldn't go back up to the house. A few hours later, someone came and picked her up, and she left. They never heard from her again.
Oh, my God.
Well, they were going to rent this house out, so they waited a while, and my mother-in-law went up to clean the house out to get ready to rent. Mm-hmm. And when she went in the house, she found all types of paraphernalia that would have to do with Santeria. She found blood. She found candle wax, feathers. Around the house, in all corners and different places, were broken rosary beads. So that's what led the researchers in the future to think that's where it all started. Okay,
so go on with your story now.
All right, now jump forward. During this time to 1987, when I came into the picture, they rented the place out. My husband told me when I came out to California that his grandmother's house, the gentleman didn't come out and say something bad was happening there, but he said he wanted to know if someone had died there, and he told my husband that he had been talking to someone on a Ouija board at the house. But that was it. He didn't want to leave or anything.
You mean? So, excuse me. Wait a minute. You mean to tell me that renter was using the Ouija board in your house?
Not in our house.
In the rental house.
In the rental house.
Oh, Okay.
He told my husband he had thought someone had died there. I guess something must have been happening. He wouldn't tell my husband, but he said he did get a Ouija board and talk to something in the house.
And
my husband was very leery of anything paranormal. Just scared him, so he didn't even want to hear about it.
So he was getting responses from the Ouija board.
Right.
But it didn't tell him who it was that he was communicating with?
Do you know what? I wasn't there. I can't tell you. And my husband said that's all he told him. He just told him, yes, I talked to something on a Ouija board. So that's as far as that went. I mean, my husband actually didn't really want to know too much because he was frightened of it.
Oh my God. Okay. Go ahead.
So this few years later, my husband and I meet. We get married. Now, he had a heart condition, so we decided to live with his mother and father, and I just loved his mother. So I was very comfortable, the four of us living together. We lived in the middle house. There was a house on each side.
Mm-hmm.
The house, I said, that was my grandmother's house, that older gentleman was still living there. And then we rented out my husband's house, and we rented it out to a young man. And my husband collected sports memorabilia, so he kept the house so we could go in and out as we wanted to, and he kept one bedroom completely locked with his possessions. Mm-hmm. And the gentleman had, he could go use the house, and he had one bedroom that he rented. And everything was fine for a while. Then the gentleman just started asking us questions, the new gentleman that moved in. He just started asking a few questions about the house, and nothing, that you would think anything was wrong. Mm-hmm. The next thing that happened, we started getting items that belonged to him come up to my mother-in-law's house. Now, my mother-in-law was very religious, and next to her bed, she had a shelf with all her religious statues and her rosary beads, and she would pray there every night before she went to bed. Things started appearing on the shelf next to the religious statues, personal items that did not belong to any of us in the house.
Okay.
There was a watch, there was underwear, socks, and...
Okay, now for everybody that's watching, that's called an apport. And for those of you who are watching that you don't know what an apport is, these are objects that are produced from another realm. And they could have been used in a ritual sacrifice.
Well, the items that were being apported up to my mother-in-law's house were actually items that belonged to this young man down at the other house. So his personal items were being apported up to the house. It's very hard to say we have your personal items because you can't just tell somebody what was going on because we didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
So we went back down. We brought his things back down. We tried putting them back in his house, and they would come right back again. So we couldn't give them back to him. Things started changing a little bit down there. He decided all of a sudden he wanted to move, and like one weekend he just moved and he was just gone. So we went down and I was going through the house thinking what had to be cleaned for the next tenant to come in. I looked up on the shelf. It was high, very high in the air, at the top in the living room, was it by the ceiling, a very long shelf. And I noticed it needed dusting, and I thought, I'm going to have to get a ladder to dust this. And I turned around, and then I turned around and looked at it again, and all the statues that were on this shelf were turned backwards, and they were turned backwards in like a blink of an eye.
Oh, my God.
Now, my husband wasn't there when this happened. He was in his room. And something that had happened before the gentleman had left, I forgot to tell you, the very first thing that ever happened, we went in his room where he had his sports memorabilia, and someone had taken down his bobbleheads and put them in the middle of the room in a very large triangle. Now, the tenant, when he was down there, said he didn't do it. The door was locked. But you automatically, you don't think something that, paranormal is happening. You think, this gentleman somehow got in the room and was touching things. So, you dismiss it. You don't think of anything paranormal happening.
Yeah.
Then, the combination with everything moving on the shelf, I started thinking, well, maybe something strange is happening here. Then other things started happening when we were down there. Things from one room would be moved to another room. We would go to one room, walk into the next room, and a chair would be from one room taken to the other room in seconds. I mean, it was like everything would happen very quickly, but never in front of you. You never watched it materialize or watched it move. It was always like 1 minute it was there, 1 minute it was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to the point, now there was nothing threatening going on at this time. I mean, you didn't come in this house and feel like there was evil or something was going to hurt you. It just was doing amazing things that were like, wow, what's happening? And it got to the point where if you came in and you could say, if something's here, move that chair into the other room. And you'd turn around and you'd look and the chair would be moved into the other room. So it was something that was intelligent. It was something that was listening and actually doing things when you asked it to.
Wow. Was there any kind of a portal in your house at all?
You know, at this point, we didn't know anything about portals or entities or anything at this point. It was just, my husband thought his uncle had died in this house, the one that we were renting out. He thought maybe it was his uncle's spirit just trying to communicate. So that's why really at the beginning we weren't fearful of it. And like I said, nothing hostile was happening. So this gentleman left, and like I said, nothing hostile was happening, and everything kind of quieted down. And then a few little things started happening in the house we were living in. First thing that happened, pictures turned backwards. It liked to turn things backwards. So that's one of the things. And we decided to rent the house out again because we didn't think it was anything threatening or bad. So we rented it out to a gentleman and his girlfriend. And he was a little bit older than her. She was a nice lady. She was kind of young for him. They were there for, over a month or so. And I noticed that she had like bruises on her face and things. And I asked her, I said, are you all right? Because she used to come out in the front yard and we lived right next door and we'd talk. And she said, well, actually, my boyfriend has changed since we moved into this house. And she started explaining to me that his personality kind of changed and he became kind of abusive to her. I recommended, I told her, well, why don't you just leave, get away from him? And she said, yeah, I'm thinking about it. Well, another month went by and all of a sudden, Michelle was gone. Her name was Michelle. I went out. And all the time I'd see her in the front yard, gone. We didn't see anything. So one day I saw the gentleman and I asked him what happened to Michelle. And he said, oh, she left. She left. She's not coming back. So I thought maybe she had taken my advice and just left him.
Yeah.
Within another week, he left. I mean, he just said, I'm leaving. It's like when they left, it was like they made the decision to leave and there was no, I'm going to be gone in 30 days. They were just gone. We went in. The house was absolutely spotless. I mean, it didn't need to be cleaned at all. It was just perfect. So we were, at this time, we were thinking of moving into a larger house, the four of us. So we were going to sell the 3 houses, the big property there, and move into a new house. So we had been looking for a new house. At this time, we weren't moving because something was going on. We had contemplated moving before that. But because of some of the things happening, my mother-in-law was very happy that we were going to be going, and so was my husband. About a month after that, I was in the front yard, and I heard knocking at the rental property. We hadn't rented it out because we weren't going to rent it out again because we were moving. The gentleman came over to me because I said, no one lives there. It's empty. And he came over and he said, well, does so-and-so live here anymore, the gentleman? I said, no, he moved about a month ago. And he said to me, did you hear what happened to Michelle? And I said, no, I have no idea. He said, they found Michelle's body in a landfill wrapped in a rug.
Oh, my God.
She had been murdered.
Oh, my God. Did her boyfriend do it?
See, I don't know. I remember I said to him, I didn't know anything about this. I went back and told my husband and my family, and now my husband was the type of person, he read all the newspapers, he knew everything that was going on. He said, I haven't heard of anything like this going on. I haven't seen anything about a body or someone being murdered. So there was no other evidence of except for what this gentleman told me. And I remember thinking, now, maybe it wasn't even in this area that her body was found. I don't know. I don't even know if it was real, if she was dead or not. And there was no way I could find out. I'm just, repeating what the gentleman told me. I remember telling my husband, asking, do you think we should go to the police and explain how, he was abusing her before when they lived here? And he said, well, how can we? We don't know what really went on. We can't do anything. So I had hoped Michelle was okay because there was nothing I can do to help her, and there was nowhere I could look to see if anything had happened. So that's what happened to that house, and that house remained empty. No, we didn't rent it out again. And the house on the other side, the gentleman, he had a son that moved in with him. son was a very nice young man, but then he slowly started to change. And I remember one time my mother-in-law was going by the house, and the young man was he had bought trees, and he was digging holes in the backyard, and he was planting trees, but he was planting them upside down.
Oh.
So that the tree part was down and the root was up.
I've heard of that before happening.
Have you really?
Yes, I have. I heard that from another story. Oh, my gosh. Wow.
So we just thought maybe the young man had mental problems or something. I don't know. We didn't know what it was. So, but then the gentleman died. He was a very nice man. He passed away. And the mother that they had broken up, his ex-wife, came and got the young man. So now both houses on each side of us were empty. Mm-hmm. We had found a new house. We were going to be moving away from this house. Now the hauntings or the things that were happening concentrated in the middle house where we were living. Again, nothing still hostile or nasty was happening. It was more of just phenomena, things moving backwards, things being misplaced, things you'd put down in one spot and you couldn't find them, and you'd find them someplace bizarre that you didn't put them.
Okay, Deborah, so who was living in this house at the time this was all happening?
It was my mother-in-law, Lee, my father-in-law, Bill, my husband, Bill, and myself.
Okay.
Just the four of us.
Okay.
So, like I said, we found a new house to move to. So, and it was like 10 miles away up the hill. And so we were moving slowly. We would take things every day and move them up to the new house and get it ready. My mother-in-law was very happy to leave because even though nothing bad had happened, she just wanted to get away from all this. The very last day when we were in the house, and it was my mother-in-law and I, we had the last box, we were packing from the bedroom, that's when the entity changed. We were in the bedroom packing the last box, and we heard the commotion in the kitchen, like a very loud sound. Ran to the kitchen, and all the cupboards that were on the wall were taken off the wall, like ripped right off the wall and thrown around the kitchen.
Oh, my God.
When we were in the kitchen, we heard glass breaking, and it had blown out all the windows in the bedroom where we just had been. So we grabbed the box and ran out of that house, and my mother-in-law never went back in that house again. That's when it started to show its true nature.
Okay, so your mother-in-law moved out, but you were still there.
No, actually, we had all moved out. The four of us all moved.
Oh, you all moved out of that house.
So what? Into a new house together.
Okay, so what happened to that house?
At that house, we had put it on the market. It was like a corner lot. It was a big corner lot. It's still down there today. Very strange. That was 25 years ago. And it's at a corner down in Rancho Cucamonga where there's development all around it. Everything is built up around it except for this one corner. And for 25 years, this corner has remained empty.
Oh my God. Okay, so now you move into another house. And,
right. We moved into the other house, and after that last experience, we were all kind of on pins and needles, hoping that we had gotten away from it.
Okay, so who moves into this house now? Who's moving into this house?
It was my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, myself, and my husband.
Okay.
And I had just, when we moved, a month before, right when we moved, I just had a baby. I had a new son. So at that time, Jamie was born when we moved in. So there were the five of us at that time.
Okay.
When we first moved up here, it was beautiful. It was quiet. Absolutely nothing happened for 2 to 3, I think it was like 3 weeks. Nothing happened. So we thought, well, that's fine. Whatever it was, we've gotten away from it and we're okay. Then, the first thing that happened, a picture was turned backwards upstairs. My mother and father-in-law had their suite of rooms were upstairs. They had a bedroom and a sitting room in their bathroom. That was all upstairs. We were at the master bedroom downstairs. So that first thing that happened was a picture up in my mother-in-law's sitting room turned backwards. And we knew as soon as we saw that we hadn't escaped it. It had come with us.
Oh, it followed you. Who was it following?
It was actually attached to my mother-in-law.
And your mother-in-law name was Lee?
Lee. The entity, it did little things at first, like I said, moving things. Same thing as down at the other place. But it started doing something that I found absolutely amazing. Terrifying, but amazing. It started in the bathroom upstairs, my mother-in-law's bathroom. It started to communicate with us by writing in soap on the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
It would leave messages. Now, the first thing when that happens, I know, you automatically think, well, which one of us is doing this? One of us must be doing it. Because you can't comprehend that something that you can't see can be writing on the mirror. It just, it's not, you don't accept that. So we would do tests. We would clean the mirror. All four of us would be together. We would leave the bathroom and stand outside and wait a few minutes, walk in the bathroom, and he would have written something on it again. So we proved to ourselves that one of us was not doing this. There was something there in the house writing. And the first thing it wrote was, talk to me.
Oh, I've got that up. I'm showing that to the viewers now. Yeah.
Right. Talk to me.
Okay, now wait a minute. You said this was in the bathroom or a bedroom?
No, this was a bathroom right off a bedroom.
Oh,
was,
okay.
Right next to the bedroom. From the bedroom, you walk right into the bathroom.
Okay. And that was the first one. And what were they using to write on the mirror? Were you able to find out? They were using soap.
Soap.
Oh, okay. So your bar of soap that was there in the bathroom, did you see any in the indentation on the soap where they had used that?
Yeah, you could see where the soap had been used.
I'll be damned. No kidding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when this entity was writing on the mirror, was anybody in that bathroom at all?
No. It would never write in front of you. You would leave and come back and it would be there. You could ask it questions. You could go in the bathroom, say something to it. You had to leave and shut the door, and then 2 seconds later you could go back in and it would answer your question on the mirror. But it never would do it right in front of your eyes.
Now, was your father-in-law communicating with this entity in the bathroom?
At the beginning, no. At the beginning, he didn't. See, this was here for like 5 years. This was the first year. And the first year, although my father-in-law was, he was kind of withdrawn. He was kind of like, he didn't really want to get involved. And, he was kind of amazed at it, but he wasn't like, really frightened of it. He just like didn't care. It was like disinterest. But he wasn't communicating with it at first, no. As a matter of fact, the entity became more hostile now. I mean, even what it wrote, I remember the one thing it wrote on the mirror was, there's no escape.
Oh, here, let me see. I think I have that somewhere. It was kind of hard to read some of your, here, I think this might be it. Yeah, there we go. I have it. No escape.
Now, you have to remember, this is 25 years ago. And when I started taking the pictures, it was like one of those old-time cameras. It's not like the digital cameras you have now.
Right.
So you would take a picture. You didn't know how the picture came out until you had them developed.
Oh, you mean, okay. Oh, but you saw, this was on the mirror. It's just that you saw it.
No, this was on the mirror.
Yeah.
I mean, when you saw what you took a picture of.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes I would take a picture and it was kind of glaring, but I couldn't tell that it didn't come out clear because I couldn't see how the picture came out until I had it developed. It's not like now with the digital where you could check your picture.
So what was happening that it got more aggressive? What were you guys doing in the house?
We were just being afraid of it, actually. The entity wanted to communicate. We didn't really want to communicate with it. We wanted it to leave. My mother-in-law she was frightened to death. And also, she thought for some reason that something like this was happening, she was being punished for something. And I would say, well, why are you being punished? Why would you be? She said, I just feel like I'm being punished because why would God let something like this happen to me? To happen to us, she would say. And I said, well, let's try to get help. Then she would say, no, people will think we're crazy. If we tell people what's going on, people will think we're crazy. So for the longest time, we just had these things happen, and there was nothing we did about it. We just endured it because she wouldn't let us go get help. Finally, it got to the point upstairs in her bedroom. It got to the point it had a symbol. Its symbol was a triangle, and then it had a tail in the middle of the bottom of the triangle. And it put this symbol all over. It took and put it over her bed. It's like a 4-foot triangle with a tail right next to a religious picture right in her bed. It did that. Then that was on the wooden. I'm looking at a mirror. So that was on the wooden headboard. No, this was above it. See, it did things on the mirror, but when we tried to ignore talking to it on the mirror, it would put things so you couldn't ignore it.
Okay, so I'm...
Like, yeah, you can stay out of the bathroom and not listen to it and see what I say, but I'm going to put it wherever you walk so you see what I'm saying.
All right, well...
So it just burnt this right into the wall over her bed.
Okay, I think that's what I'm showing. It looks like wood. There's a cross with symbols on it. So what was putting... Do you know what those symbols meant?
Do you know what I don't? It did a lot of different types of symbols that are used in ritual magic. I don't know what they meant. Well, then when it was on the mirror, it would use words. But when it's doing on the walls, it would do symbols. It sliced up their bed. I mean, I think there's a picture on the website where you see they just took their like a knife or something and just ripped their bed to pieces.
Yeah, I have a picture.
It got so bad that they moved in downstairs with us into the master bedroom. So after about first 6 months up in this new house, they moved in with us and we slept all together in the master bedroom from then on.
Now, I also have a picture of, it wrote on the mirror, Lee die.
Right. Then it started writing things about Lee. It hated Lee. I hate Lee. Lee will die. I had constantly, and then it focused all this negativity on my mother-in-law. During this time, it was destroying the house. I mean, it carved that symbol in walls, gouged it out of the wall so there'd be a hole in the shape of a triangle. It cut our rugs with gigantic triangles in the rugs. It literally destroyed the house. Every day you'd have to wake up. This wasn't things happening once in a while. This was every single day.
Oh my!
We woke up to this. We wake up in the morning, start patching walls. I mean, it was a terrible time. This entity could do such things that was unbelievable. One time we were with the four of us. We tried always to stay together, especially with my mother-in-law, because that's where it focused its anger and its negativity towards her. It literally just tried to destroy my mother-in-law. She couldn't have clothes. It'd go in the closet, cut her clothes up. She'd go to put on a blouse and one of the arms would be cut off. Or she'd go to put clothes on and it took bleach and spilled bleach all over her clothes.
Now, would there be objects also disappearing and you never found them again?
Sure, there were things gone. There were things brought that we did. It liked to bring knives. By after about a year, believe this or not, we had a box of knives that we threw away. We must have had 100 knives. It would bring knives and it would plant them in places to hurt my mother-in-law.
Now, what about that? What about the spear?
The spear. That didn't come for a year or so later.
And what was the meaning of the spear?
The entity wanted my father-in-law to perform a blood ritual. He wanted blood.
Okay, now how do you know that?
He wrote it on the mirror.
He did?
Yes. He even wrote the whole... I wish I had that picture. What happened, why I only have part of the pictures we took, we had people from all over the United States, some people from out of the United States come to try to help us. Someone would come and they say, now take pictures of everything and document everything. So we would take pictures and document. They couldn't help us, so we'd have someone else to come in. The next people would say, oh, now you have to get rid of all these pictures and all this documentation because you're keeping the entity here by acknowledging it. So we'd throw everything away. So it was like on and off. Some people would say keep them, some people would say throw them away. My husband never threw everything away. So what he did was every time we were supposed to throw all the pictures away, he would save some and throw them in a box. And I didn't even know about it until he died 2 years ago. And I found a box of pictures in the closet. And there's the negatives and the pictures from over 25 years ago.
Oh, thank God. Oh, my God. Good for him. Now, I have a picture of, I guess it's your mother-in-law, with, it looks like a wooden handle, and then it's a round blade.
Right. That's what it would start doing in the TV room. There was a fireplace there, and I'd like to take pieces of wood from the fireplace and make different designs on the floor and put her picture in the middle. Then it would go and it looked like a sickle, a very old sickle for like cutting grass or something.
Yeah.
And it had it on the ground with a picture of her from when she was very, very young. Some of the pictures and things that brought, we don't even know where it got them from.
So you didn't have that picture before? You don't know where it came from?
If she had it, it was thrown away or packed somewhere we didn't even know we had it.
Oh my God.
But it knew. So it would do that. Like I said, it focused everything on her. It wouldn't even let her have a wallet. If she couldn't have a wallet with her, it destroyed her license, her credit cards. She couldn't, it just took away her identity. And The entity wanted her dead. I don't think it would kill her, but I think it wanted her to either commit suicide or it wanted someone to kill her for him.
But why?
And the reason why I call it him is because one of the first things it told us to do, it wanted us to call him Prince.
And how did you get that information?
It wrote it on the mirror.
Oh, be damned.
Yeah, it didn't write once in a while. It wrote all the time.
So every day.
I mean, it wasn't once a day. I mean, you'd wake up in the morning, it would have, sometimes it would have directions, what it wanted you to do for the day. It became our captor. It controlled us. I mean, it isolated us from people. If we went out of the house, say we went to dinner to get away from everything, we'd come home and he'd have things at the dinner, like the lady's name that waited on us, on the kitchen table waiting for us when we got home to let us know that when we went out, he went with us.
Wow.
We went to visit friends of my mother-in-law's. We had to stop visiting people because we went and visited her friend. When we got home, the gentleman's wallet was on our kitchen table. Now, how can we go back to the gentleman and say, oh, we have your wallet? I mean, it wanted us isolated, and it did a good job of doing it.
Now, there was also a picture of your mother-in-law, and it looked like wood surrounding her picture.
Right, that was just other things it did. It would take pieces of wood from the fireplace and make symbols and put her pictures in them.
Oh, my God. Now, also, what about the knife in the wall?
Right. She'd be sitting down, and all of a sudden she'd look next to her, and there'd be a knife sticking in the wall.
How often
she'd go to sit in a chair. It got to the point, and a knife, if she didn't look, she'd sat on a knife sticking up. It was like the almost booby trap things. Where she'd sit in certain places that were her favorite places, like people do. And it would put knives so that if she sat down, she'd get stabbed. It would put knives in her pillows. It got to the point where we had to go with her before she could sit down and examine everything to make sure she could sit down safely.
Oh, my God. Do you think that Juanita conjured up a tulpa?
Do you know what? I don't know too much about these things. What I think happened, Juanita did something maybe wrong, not practicing it correctly, opened up something, and something that knew my mother-in-law, I'll explain that in a few minutes, found my mother-in-law and father-in-law. And that's what happened. I mean, it was an opening, and it came through and found my mother-in-law. Now, the reason I say that is it got to the point where I just, you get to a point where you just had enough. You have to start standing up for yourself. So I remember my husband had a bad heart, so he couldn't be the strong one. My mother-in-law was petrified, and my father-in-law was indifferent to the whole situation. So I remember I was to the point where I knew everybody had to be protected. And it gets to the point where you're not frightened anymore. So I went into the mirror and I told Mr. Entity, I said, Mr. Entity, I'm going to treat you with respect. You're going to treat me with respect. You're not going to hurt my child. You're not going to hurt my husband, and you're not going to hurt my mother-in-law. And I left the room and came back. And he wrote on the mirror, I will not touch the child. I will not touch your husband, but Lee belongs to me.
Oh, my God.
So I asked him, why does Lee belong to you? And, of course, when I say asked him, I looked at the mirror and asked the question. I leave after I clean the mirror so he has a place to write, and he would write everything he had to say to me. He told me a story that Lee had been promised to him as a sacrifice in a long, long time ago, and the sacrifice never came to fruition. But she was promised to him, and he felt that she belonged to him, and now he came to collect her.
Did your mother-in-law finally pass on?
She didn't pass on until 2010.
And this,
No.
what year was this happening now?
This was back in 1988 or 89 that he said this.
Well, how long did this last?
It actually started in 84, but like for 3 years it was almost dormant, just little things. It started up really bad in 87, and it didn't leave until 91.
And so, why did it finally leave?
What happened, like I said, we found out that my father-in-law had been going. I was the only one that would talk to it in the bathroom because everybody else was frightened of it. So I would communicate with it. I found my father-in-law sneaking into this bathroom, and he'd be in there alone, and then he'd come out and go back in, and then when I went back in, the mirror would be cleaned. So I knew he was communicating and not wanting us to know what he was saying to the entity.
Oh, my God.
But Mr. Entity said to me, he told me on the mirror, he said, you know, your father-in-law is coming in and talking to me and then erasing the mirror so you don't know. So Mr. Entity did not like my father-in-law, but he wanted to use him. And my father-in-law wanted to use the entity. That's what made this so complicated. There was an entity here that wanted my mother-in-law dead. I don't think he was going to do it personally, but he wanted someone to do it for him or her to commit suicide. Then there was my father-in-law, who also wanted my mother-in-law dead, but he was trying to convince the entity to kill her. So it was a horrible time, because not only did my mother-in-law have to be protected from an entity, but we had to protect her from my father-in-law as well.
So, did you ever call in the clergy?
That's one of the first people that we called, was the priest. My mother-in-law was very religious and really strong Catholic. The priest came to the house. She called him not to explain what happened, but she said, once we get him up here, then we'll tell him what's going on. We'll ask him to come to bless the house. Now, this is like 2 or 3 months after we moved into the new house. This was the first person she allowed to even come into the house to see what was going on. He came in. He was an older gentleman. He came in the front door, and there's a foyer. He would not leave the hall. He made the sign of the cross, said a prayer, and he said, all right, your house is blessed. I have to leave. And I remember my mother-in-law pleading with him, please, go to every room and bless the rest of the house. He said, no, it's blessed now. Then she tried to explain to him what was going on. He didn't want to hear it.
Oh.
And he looked at me and he made the sign of like crazy on the side of his head and said, when women get this age, they get like this. And he literally ran out of the house and ran into his car and took off, and we never heard from him again.
Did you try and contact someone else?
We tried contacting other religious people. We couldn't get anyone because my mother-in-law wasn't a member of a church. She was a Catholic, but she hadn't been to church in many years. So we weren't a member of a church. So there was no support system from a church other than just asking the Catholic religion for help, and they just wouldn't do it. So from there, we tried to do it through the university. I think it was UCLA or USC. Thelma Moss, who was well known in this paranormal field. She sent a researcher out, Carrie Gaynor, to try to help us. Mm-hmm. We had people. Lloyd Arbeck, who was the head of a paranormal organization in Southern California, sent out Trish Chacon to come out to the house. We had people from all over come out. They would come out, investigate it, see what was going on. They couldn't tell us what it was or how we could get rid of it. They couldn't help. They would try, but there was nothing they could do. We had one lady who was a doctor of parapsychology, Dr. Evelyn Paglini, who was actually an awesome woman. I mean, when she came in, I thought if anybody can get rid of this entity, Dr. Paglini can do it. But she couldn't. And the entity hated Dr. Paglini. The entity was a very intelligent being. It wasn't just, you see some of these monster movies where there's this terrible, horrible demon monster all over. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like that. Yes, it did terrible, horrible things, but there was a part of it that was very intelligent. It spoke all different languages. My mother-in-law spoke like 4 or 5 languages, and one of the languages was a dead language called Tobresh, which is a combination of Sicilian and Albanian. And my husband spoke it also. So sometimes she would try to speak in Tobresh to my husband so Mr. Entity wouldn't know what was going on.
Okay.
Because he would monitor us. And he would make comments on the mirror of everything we said. So she would speak in Tobresh to my husband, thinking he couldn't understand it. And then I'd go in, and he would answer what she said in Tobresh. So he spoke Spanish, he spoke Italian, he spoke all different languages.
So you said that your mother-in-law speaks many languages?
Yes.
And that was this. Okay. You don't think it was your mother-in-law, do you?
No. She wanted her dead. I mean, no, it was an entity. It was no one. She couldn't be writing on the mirror. Like I said, we checked.
Well,
things would happen when she wasn't around. So it wasn't my mother-in-law. No, she was the victim.
Did Ed and Lorraine Warren come and investigate as well?
We had Ed and Lorraine Warren come. They were very nice to us. I know they have a lot of bad publicity as well as good publicity, but they were very nice. Especially Ed Warren was very nice to us. When he was here, he did the rite of provocation, and I remember we sat, it was my mother-in-law and my child sat in a different room. And my father-in-law, Ed and Lorraine Warren, a gentleman they had videotaping, and my husband and myself were in the living room. And Ed did the rite of provocation, and whatever was in the house went into my father-in-law. And my father-in-law, now he changed. Now, I don't mean change like you look at him and he was a completely different person. You could say, oh, that's something else. He changed his mannerisms. His arm curled up to his chest. He bent down like he had a hump on his back. He dragged his leg, and he went over at it actually went right at Lorraine, at Ed Warren. And I remember Ed picked up, he said, I have a relic. He told me he had a relic of the cross, and he held it up to my father-in-law. And I remember, and I don't know if I have the words right, because this was 25 years ago, but it was something of, he was going to bite Ed Warren's hand off and chew the cross up and spit it in his face. Oh. So it went into my father-in-law that night, and then it was very scary, very scary.
And so what happened to your father-in-law that it went into your father-in-law that night, and then what happened the next day?
Actually that night, they left. They didn't stay in the house with us. They were staying at a hotel. When she was doing the ritual, my father went back to normal. But later that night, which was really terrifying, like I said, we all lived in the same bedroom at night. Thank goodness it's very large, and we had like the sitting room area, my husband and myself, we had a bed, and they had the main bed, and my son was in a crib. And in the middle of the night, because I didn't sleep much at night, my father-in-law got up from his bed to go to the bathroom, our bathroom in there. And when he got up, he was like he was when he was possessed. He was hunched over, his arm was curled up, and he dragged his leg, and he went into the bathroom. I mean, you're all alone with this thing in the middle of the night.
Oh, my God.
With you. It was like terrifying.
Weren't you afraid to be in the house with him?
I wasn't afraid because I knew I had to protect my mother-in-law and my family. So I was past fear. It was more, I just was in the protect mode. So that's why I was okay because I knew I was going to make sure she was okay and my family was okay.
Now, this entity killed some of your dogs.
Yeah, I really don't like talking too much about the one back at the other house because
I don't want to know.
One of the most horrible things I've ever seen.
I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
I don't.
Okay,
I can't think about it because sometimes I think about it and I can't get it out of my head. Mm-hmm. But he drowned one.
Oh no, that's okay. I don't want to know.
Yeah, he killed 3 of them. So it wasn't like it was this nice entity that liked to communicate. It was a terrible, frightening entity that had control of us.
The thing is, he killed your sweet little animals. Did he ever come after your son?
No, never. When it said to me, I will not, although how can you trust a demon?
That's true.
It said, I will not touch the child. And as a matter of fact, one time, my mother-in-law's glasses were missing. And my father-in-law said to her, oh, you probably just misplaced them. And she found them in the microwave, believe it or not. And so she said, oh, yeah, I found them in the microwave. I misplaced them. And he said, oh, Jamie probably put them there. Well, Jamie could barely walk. He was a little baby. And the entity wrote on the microwave in soap, the little boy is innocent. So he never really bothered the child, and he never touched my husband. Like I said, his main focus was my mother-in-law.
Did you ask Mr. Entity, and that's the name you gave him?
Yes.
Did you ask him why he harmed your dogs?
The one down at the house, he did, I know because he was mad because we were leaving. The one little dog, he did it it was my mother-in-law's little poodle. And he drowned it, and he told her that he was being kind, like he was going to be kind to her, putting her out of her misery, because she was old.
But did you actually say, why did you do that? Why did you have to kill the animals?
And he said, for the little dog, because I did ask him that. He said, I put it out of its misery like I'm going to do to Lee.
So this entity was really trying to threaten you, to scare you, and it was probably thriving off of the fear in the house.
The fear, and also my father-in-law, we found out later, really hated my mother-in-law. He wanted her gone. He wanted to be free, and he wanted money, and he really wanted her dead.
Oh, my God. So that's a whole new Oh my
Right.
God.
That's what makes it even more complicated, because here we have an entity that wants her dead, and then we have my father-in-law who jumped on the opportunity thinking, well, if the entity kills her, I'm free. I can get rid of her. So he wanted the entity. As a matter of fact...
Maybe your father-in-law conjured up this entity.
Pardon?
Maybe your father-in-law conjured up this entity.
No, I really believe that Juanita that opened a portal and let something out, and it found my mother-in-law, because I think it had to do with past lives that she was promised as a blood ritual, and he came to get that. I really do believe that.
Now, with Ed and Lorraine Warren, they only came there that one night. Did they come back the next night?
They came for about 4 days, investigating, filming, doing different things. And Lorraine told me, she said, this is one of the oldest, intelligent, evil entity demons I've ever come across.
But she didn't
She
have...
said, this is something very different. And they stayed about 4 days, and they couldn't get the Catholic Church involved because they're from back east, and they have their connections more back east. Mm-hmm. But they did have a friend who was an Episcopalian minister in Los Angeles, and they arranged for him to come out to do an exorcism at the house. My father-in-law would not allow us to let the man in. My mother-in-law was a good lady, but she was under the impression if you were married to someone, no matter what they did, you stayed married, because that was the way it was. And he told her, you can't have an Episcopalian come to our house because you're Catholic, and then the Catholic religion will be mad at you. He gave her some baloney story. And so actually, the poor man came to the door. They wouldn't even let me go to the door and tell him that we weren't going to let him in. I mean, that's how bad it was.
Oh, God. And so when Ed and Lorraine, what did they say to you the last day that they were there at your house?
The last thing they said was, because they left before the gentleman was going to come for the exorcism. They had to leave because I remember at the time their daughter, I think her name was Judy, was having a baby, her first child. And so they were very anxious to get back east. So they left the day before the exorcism was supposed to take place. So when they left, they were under the impression that the man was going to come and do the exorcism. We were going to be okay.
Did anybody contact you? All those that had been in your house, like Lloyd Arrowback and the others, and the Ed and Lorraine Warren, had anybody contacted you later on to see how you were doing?
Yeah. The Lloyd Arrowback stayed in touch with us. One gentleman that was very famous, he's from around here, he was a medium out here, Brian Hurst. He's still a friend to this day. He was a wonderful gentleman. He came trying to see what was going on. He was afraid he wouldn't go into a trance in the house because he was just too afraid. He tried to get other people to come to help us. He had a lady that was supposedly could get rid of things like this, and she was going to come to the house, and the night before she had dinner with 3 or 4 of the people that were going to come with her, and they were at a restaurant, and the entity took all their knives and stuck them in the one glass in front of her, and it freaked her out. She said if this entity could do something like this, it was a warning, don't get involved. So she backed out, she wouldn't come.
Did this entity ever manifest itself in front of you?
Now, it did twice to my mother-in-law, and both times. One time it tried strangling her. If it wanted to kill her, it could have. I know that. It wanted someone else to do it or her to do it. But you actually saw when she came to, she had bruises, finger marks on her throat. And it showed itself to her. To her, it was actually black. It was a black came at her, and that's what she remembered. I saw it, but not itself manifesting, but taking something from the surroundings and using it to show itself. We had 2 people come. They were shamans. They came to the house to try to help us with Indian rituals to try to rid us of the entity. At this time, Mr. Entity took over the whole upstairs of the house. I mean, you could start to go upstairs, and you got like halfway up the stairs, and you could just feel it. I mean, it was bad. So I remember they asked me to go with them, so the 3 of us went upstairs. At the top of the stairs, if you go to the right, there's a door, and it leads into the attic. And other than that, I went into a big sitting room. They started doing their ritual magic, their Indian magic, and they had shells or some type of container, and they were burning incense. I think it was sage, and they had feathers, big feathers, and they were going around making the smoke go all over. And And I remember one said to me, he's in he doesn't want to have anything to do with us, so he's hiding in the attic. He's putting himself in the attic to get away from us. So they opened the attic door, and they were blowing with their feathers the sage, the smoke, into the attic. And I was standing right with them, and as they were doing that, they would blow the smoke into the attic, and like a second later, all the smoke would blow out of the attic. So it was like it was in and out, the sage. Finally, the one gentleman said, we're going to have to go in and confront it. So the three of us went in. I stood right in the doorway. They went right into the room, so I was watching everything that went on. In this room, the walls on the one side and the top were covered in insulation. It was like a pink installation, like rolls of it. And he did some type of ritual and commanded it to show itself. And as I stood right there and watched, the insulation from the walls came down and formed into this huge head. It was like 5 foot tall on the side of the wall. And I could just see the side view. I couldn't see the front view. I just saw the side. And it was this huge head. And it wasn't horrible looking. It was strange looking. It was very, very strong face with sharp lines and a gigantic jaw, high cheekbones, and a big nose, a large nose. And on the side of its head, where the ear would be, a horn started. And it started where the ear was and did a circle, and then went up over the back of the head and came out the front.
Oh my!
And I remember standing there watching. I just couldn't believe it. I just watched it. I can close my eyes to this day and still see it. And it stayed there for like 10, 15 seconds, and then it dissipated, and the insulation just fell to the ground.
Oh my God! So okay, again, this all ended in 1991. So your mother-in-law was still alive. So the entity, but the entity went away. So he never got what he wanted.
No, he didn't. He didn't get what he wanted. When Dr. Paglini came, she said to us, the reason why you're not getting rid of this entity is someone in the house is giving it permission to be there. She said, I'm going to find out which one it is. We thought we knew it was Dad, because of the way he was acting, but she wanted to make sure. So she did something. She said, in the middle of the night tonight, something's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, call me up and let me know what happens. Well, that night, 3 o'clock in the morning, my father-in-law sits up in bed and starts choking and shaking like he's freezing and choking. And we all ran over to him and said, are you all right? He could barely breathe. We were going to call the ambulance. And this lasted for like 10, 15 minutes. And then just something like a switch turned off, everything stopped. He put his head back down on the bed and went right back to sleep. So I told Dr. Paglini what happened that night. She said, he's the one that's keeping the entity in your house. So we were shown, yes, he was the one. So we tried talking my mother-in-law into telling him he had to leave. Because if he didn't leave, we were never going to get rid of the entity. As long as he was in the house, giving it permission to stay, it was going to stay. It didn't have to leave. Finally, after like another 6 months, after this thing kept tormenting her and trying to make sure that she wanted to kill herself, finally she gave in and asked him to leave. And he left. Now, during this time, we had a gentleman staying with us who was a researcher. And the gentleman was a little strange to begin with. I mean, we became friends with him, but he had his problems. And he was amazed at the strength of Mr. Entity. And he was convinced that if Mr. Entity would leave with him, it would change his life and make his life better for some reason. So when my father-in-law left, I remember talking to the entity and saying, there's no one here now keeping you here. I'm not going to let you have my mother-in-law, so you might as well just leave. And then Gary went into the bathroom and he told the entity, you can leave with me. Well, Mr. Entity told me, when I say told me, I mean he wrote on the mirror. He said, I do not want to go. And then he wrote about Gary. He didn't really like Gary. He said, I will not work with an inferior being. So he didn't really want to go with Gary. But finally I just said, you're not welcome here. You have to go. And actually, at this point, he gave in. He said to Gary, he wrote on the mirror, he said, I'm ready to leave now, Gary. You are my servant. Oh. And the last thing Mr. Entity wrote to me on the mirror was, goodbye, my family. And that was nearly 25 years ago, and not a thing has happened since.
And so what happened to Gary?
I have stayed in contact with Gary through the years. Now, the first year when he left here, he told me he knew the entity was with him because he started getting triangle where he was living. But he said after a while, now this is what Gary told me. I really don't know what happened. He said, oh no, he's not with me anymore. He's gone. So then I talked to Gary a few years back, and Gary's very strange now. He's become more of an alcoholic, and he's on the internet. He does a lot of casting spells and doing strange things. So I don't really think the entity's with him anymore. I think the entity, when Gary went to Europe, found someone else to latch onto, and so I think, but it did affect Gary. So,
but okay, so Deborah, how come it took you How come it took you so long? Why didn't you just tell the entity when it was doing these things, get out of here? You're not welcome.
Oh, I did.
Oh, you did.
I tell him you have to leave, and he'd tell me I don't have to, and he didn't. Dr. Paglini explained to us if someone in your household gives an entity or a demon or anything permission to be in the house, they don't have to leave, and no one can make them leave.
Okay, so when the entity agreed to go with Gary, was your father-in-law still alive?
He was alive, but he was gone. He didn't live with us anymore. So he didn't have the right to give the entity permission to stay in the house because he was no longer a resident of the house.
So all it needed was one person to give it permission.
All it needs is one person to say, you can be here, and no one can get rid of it.
My God.
Because it gets permission. It has permission to be there.
Wow. So what's happening now? You guys are you're out of the house.
No.
You're still in that house?
Yes.
Oh, my God.
No. This was our house. I wasn't giving up my house.
Oh, my God. So who's living in this house now?
I am, and with my children. Yeah, this is my home. I don't let anybody run me out of it.
Oh, my goodness. And you've had no problems?
Nothing. When it said goodbye, the entity at the end actually started bringing me presents. It was strange. It would bring me, like we went to Sedona one time to try to find someone to help us to get rid of it. And I love rocks. I love all kinds of rocks. Now, not jewels rocks, but just rocks. I just like rocks. And I wanted to go up on top of Bell Mountain and get a rock from there. And I remember we didn't have time to do that. And I said, oh, geez, I would have loved a rock from there. Well, when we got home, in the back of our car was this stone. It was like a 10-pound stone. And the entity wrote it was a gift from Bell Mountains because I couldn't get up and get it. He got me one. I mean, things like that the entity did.
That's really
strange. It was a very strange time. I mean, It was like being in the Twilight Zone.
Oh, my God. I'll say, how are you doing today?
Fine. Everything, like I said, 25 years almost, and not a thing has happened. But during the time when it left, my husband, my mother-in-law, and myself, we decided we would never talk about it. We were just, because so many people have said, if you talk about it, you can bring it back, and we didn't want it back. So for 23 years, because when my husband died, I decided, you know what, I have to tell someone what happened. It's been in me for so many years, I have to let people know what happened, because it was the most amazing thing that you can't imagine. Like the spear that it apported for the blood ritual. It's about a foot long. It's handmade. When he apported it to my father-in-law, I took possession of it, and I put it away. And the entity, and I went into the bathroom and told the entity, you're not going to have my mother-in-law's blood. And it got so upset, it blew out all the windows in the top floor of the house.
So when did you do that ritual? Oh,
I said, that's it. I don't care, you're not having it. And to this day, I put that away, and I still have it. And at the time, we took it to the museum to see what it was, because it was so strange. And they told us it was from the Belgian Congo area. It was over 200 years old, and they believed it was a ritual, the instrument of ritual magic, because although it was a spearhead, it wasn't sharpened on the sides. It was pointed for bloodletting. It wasn't for hunting or for warfare, because it wasn't sharpened correctly. So they said it probably belonged to a shaman. So he apported that from the Belgian Congo over 200 years ago to perform his blood ritual.
I'll be damned. Oh, my God, what a story.
So when I didn't think about telling the story. As a matter of fact, until my husband died, my children didn't even know what happened. I never had even told them about it, because we had kept silent. We had vowed we weren't going to talk about it. But like I said, when my mother-in-law was dead, she had died in 2010, and my husband died. My husband still was affected by it. It frightened him. Till he died, he had to sleep with a nightlight on. And if he went out into the kitchen at night, someone had to go with him. He would not go alone. So we were all scarred by died, I said, and I found the pictures, all the memories came back. And I said, I have to tell people what happened. I just had to. It was like it was bottled up inside of me for so long. I just wanted to grab people and say, listen, you have to hear what happened. So this was, I just, getting the book out was wonderful because it just felt good telling people what happened.
Oh my God! Now, have you contacted Lorraine Warren at all to let her know that you wrote a book on this?
Well, you know what? Before I even wrote the book, I wrote to a lot of people and told them I was going to write the book because I wanted them to know what was going on. Mm-hmm. A lot of them gave me permission to say, fine, use like Brian Hurst. He even, on Amazon, he even backed, if you look on Amazon, you can see where he even told that he was involved with it and everything that happened was correct. That's what happened. Ed and Lorraine Warren, I have tried to get a hold of them for over a year. And I get absolutely no response.
Oh, jeez.
And you know what? I would love to get a copy of the tape of the rite of provocation when it went into my father-in-law, because they filmed that, and I would like to get a copy of that to show people what happened. And they won't contact me at all.
Why don't you try? Oh gosh, you know what? Maybe I can get you some help on that.
Okay.
Let me see what I can do. Okay.
Okay, I'd appreciate that.
Okay. Would you tell everybody where you have a website? Do you have a website, Deborah?
Yeah, it's a deadlyhaunting.com, and you can go on there and you can see the pictures of the demon writing and the spear and some of the destruction it did. It loved to destroy religious symbols, like to snap their heads off the statues and pull their left arms off. So it was all pictures of different things that you can see on the website.
My God. And then the book is available. I guess they can get that information off the website then.
Right. It's at Amazon. You can go to Barnes & Noble. It's on Nook. It's on all different ones.
Wow. Gee, Deborah, my God. When did the book come out?
It came out about 3.5 months ago, 4 months ago, in April.
Wow.
The end of April it came out.
Wow. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Deborah, for being on the show tonight and sharing your story with me and all the viewers. It's awesome.
Thank you so much for allowing me to tell my story, because even though I've been telling it quite a bit, it still feels good to tell it.
Oh my God. Well, I'm sorry for all that you went through, but I'm glad it's over, and I wish you all the best, and maybe they'll make a movie. They've been making movies out of the Ed and Lorraine case files, and yours may be next. Have you been contacted at all?
No. The book just came out, so
you'll be
concentrating on just getting the book out there.
Oh, you'll be getting a phone call. It's an awesome story, and again, thank you so much for being a guest on my show. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for allowing me to tell my story. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, Deborah. Best wishes to you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Thank you. Oh my God. Oh, what a story. Okay, hey, Dave, are we going to be doing an ITC session? I know there's a delay. Well, let me see. Let me know. Yeah, it's on delay. I'll wait for the answer. Let me go check Facebook. Okay. All right. All right, so looks like we're going to be doing an ITC. Yeah, I'm up for it. All right, so I'm going to have to create a new, I don't know. I guess we can continue on with this. Oh my God. I got to set it up. Shoot. Okay. Yeah. ITC. Let's see. I will have to. Yeah. Hey, Dave. Yeah, you want to do an ITC?
Alright. Yeah, let's do it. Everybody wants us to.
Okay, so should I just keep it running?
We're going to be doing an ITC. Yeah, I'm up for it.
Do you want me to just turn your sound off? Do you want me to just keep it running, or
Let me get this sound off.
yeah?
There we go.
Okay. Yes, I'm up for it. The thing is, I've got to connect my Skype and everything. I'm just wondering if I can.
Type in there. We'll do it at 11.
All right, at 11. Okay, so we'll post on post on Facebook, and we'll post on Google Plus, and they can go to my Paranormal Zone page to get the connection. Okay. So what?
And I'll put it in the chat too.
All right. What? Okay. Well, we're still live. What time are we going to do this at? At 7 o'clock my time. 3 hours or?
No, 1 hour. Is that too soon?
Oh no, I just have. Okay, it's 7 o'clock. It's 7 now, which would be, 10 o'clock your time.
It's 8 o'clock your time.
So it's 8 o'clock.
Do it at 8 o'clock your time.
All right. Okay. All right. So 8 o'clock then.
Yep.
Okay. So 8 o'clock, and we'll post 8. Okay, in 1 hour. ITC in. I'll type it in. You too. 1 hour. And then let's see. Okay, so I'm gonna put up. All right, so you guys. You have to go to Paranormal Zone's front page. See where it says Paranormal Zone TV web series. Click on that, and that's where I'm gonna put the new event. Okay, and Dave will set it up, and I've got to set up my Skype. So I guess that's it. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. 11. Okay. No, it's 10 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock. No, 11. Okay. 11 p.m. is Eastern Standard Time. It's 8 p.m. Pacific. And 10 o'clock Central, right?
Right.
Okay. And so you guys have to go to my front page, to Paranormal Zone web series, and that's where I'm going to start the live event. And we'll do it in about an hour. Okay? All right.
An hour and 10 minutes or whatever.
Well, all right.
Set it
Well,
up for 11. Just set it up for 11.
okay.
My time.
All right. So now it's going to be, instead of 10, it's going to be at 11.
Right.
All right. All right. So.
That's what we agreed on the first time, 11 o'clock Eastern
All
time.
right, so 11. Oh, it's my time. 8, 9. Okay, 11. All right, so it's like less than an hour now. Okay, I'll set it up.
Okay.
Okay, guys. All right, I'll get setting up now. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, guys, like I said, I'm gonna set this up. There's gonna be a live event on my page, but we'll post all over, and I gotta get this set up. Okay, so we'll see you back in about an hour. All right, so everybody, thanks so much for joining me, and I'm really excited about this ITC session, and I'll see you in a bit, okay? Thanks, guys. Thank you so much. Good night, everybody. If you're not going to return, have a wonderful remaining weekend. It is a holiday, and thanks so much. See you next Sunday. I have another great show. In-house guest, Dr. Jeff Dwyer, and we're going to be talking about demons, spirits, and ghosts. Okay? So see you next Sunday. Good night, everybody. Thank you.